So for this project I will be using some scrap Baltic birch. It's a pretty thick plywood. I've seen some other designs that use the same type of wood. But what I'm going to have to do is flip it over because I want both sides to be nice, and you can see the underside has some knots. So I'm going to have to measure out 10 inches on the as neat as possible. Okay, so the way that I measured this out, if you can see here, it's kind of bad lighting, but this is going to be one 10 by 10, and then the other 10 by 10 is going to be right here. I tried to avoid the bad knots as much as possible. The little one isn't so bad. The underside is all nice, so that'll be like the showpiece, but I'll probably have this portion here with the little knot be on the underside. But now I know also that I'll just cut this board straight in half, and then I'll make another cut going this way. And chances are I probably will use this scrap piece here for some of the other parts. So it should all work out just fine. Alright, now we have our 10 by 10 boards. What we're going to do next is figure out the dimensions or the cut pieces we need for the where the handle's going to rest. It's going to be something like this. The way to figure it out is to take another piece of the birch that you have, so you keep the same thicknesses, and you're going to rest. During this part of the video I measured inaccurately. I needed to make the tool's handle height. I had to measure it with the extra board that was going to be placed across the tool, the top. That was going to be like a stopper for the tool handle, and so my measurement was off by 3/4 of an inch. So you want to make sure that when you do measure that tool's height, that you have that extra block, as you'll see in the next segment. I can make a mark and cut 2 pieces at this size to be on either side, because then the screw's going to go through here, and I can hold this together, and then I'll know whatever this size is. I'll cut another piece of wood to match right here, and then those 3 pieces will be screwed in and glued together there. The reason why I'm not going to take precise measurements on this is because it'll vary on the type of wood you use and the thickness that you use, and these can be made with all sorts of thicknesses of wood. So that's why I'm just going to measure it as I go and not give off any specifics. Now I'm going to figure out the measurement that I need for the smaller piece here in the middle. Again, I'm using a scrap piece so I get the same thickness. Now I know I need to cut here. So the back portion should look like this. What we're going to do is glue and screw these 3 together, and then the handle is going to fit into here. That's like such. Also, there's going to be a piece of wood here, which could be, I might cut another piece to be longer, but that acts as a stopper. So as you're putting pressure, it'll stop right here. And then what I've seen done also is adding the same thickness at the end of the handle. So I'll probably cut a small piece and put at the end of the handle to also act as a stopper at the other end. And then I'll probably add some curve to the handle as well, just to make it smoother on the hand. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is glue together and also use some screws the handle holding portion. I did learn it is actually better to cut the center piece a little bit shorter than I previously had it. I had it at this length, but the shorter piece, if you'd like, just cut a little bit more off. Make it the thickness of both boards put together so that when the handle's in here, it'll have free range just to move freely. Alright, so now this is, the glue has set here. I don't even have to put a screw in through, but you could if you want. Now the handle is clamped into place here, and I'm going to drill a small pilot all the way through, and then a larger drill bit to fit in the bolt. So, after you've drilled through, depending on your choice, because you can also use a drill press. I chose to use just a regular drill. This will go through like this, and then you just put in a washer and a wing nut you can use on the other side here. So next up, we're going to glue this top portion on top of the lid, and so that once this is attached, this is where the pressure is going to go. So I'm just going to eyeball it, make sure it's even. You could cut it to fit the full 10 inches, or you could just cut it shorter. I'm just utilizing all the scrap wood I have rather than find more or cut another piece. It doesn't have to be exact length. And also, you could possibly screw this in, but you just have to make sure you use short screws that won't go all the way through the other side. Alright, now it's nice and flush. I can bring pressure on the clamps, clamp it into place. Okay, now it is time to screw the handle attachment to the base. Again, I'm just eyeballing it, just getting about halfway through. Now, if you have extra large clamps, it'd be good to use them now so that you can hold it in place. In my case, I have 36-inch clamps here, so I'm going to use that to hold it in place while I screw one end. You want to make sure to screw it into the lower plate. Alright, so both screws are in. They're not necessarily completely lined up, evenly, but again, I'm not trying to make this look pretty, just the very simplified version of what you can make. Now to put the rear hinges. What I'm going to do is put a little spacer of some cardboard here so that the hinges have some room. Alright, so once all the hinges are in, it should look like that. I'll be honest, putting on hinges has always been kind of a pain for me because the lining them up right and make sure you get the right gap and all that, so make sure you take your time making sure you get them right. And so now it opens up. Now what you can do is give it a light sanding by hand. So because I like to be transparent and just, you know, show my mistakes so other people don't make them, something that I realized with this little design is that this piece up here should be inset a little bit, because as it's pushing down it'll get caught and you want it to reach it when it's a little bit lower. And since this was already attached with the wood glue and it's dry, what I decided to do was bring this part more outward by putting a spacer, and I'm gonna attach that in between here at the base board, and that should fix the problem. Alright, so I decided to glue this, cut this little piece of plywood out and glue it onto the handle. I'll put some pressure on it here to hold it, and then I'm going to put a clamp on it. So before I started the final sanding, I realized that I had another happy accident, and that is right here. There's a little bit too much of a gap from this piece to here. That doesn't let me get that little final push. And I think it has something to do with the way that I may have drilled the handle into the holder here. I think it got askew a little bit, so that was a problem on my fault. But the solution I found for it would be just to get this little real thin piece of wood that I already had, and I'm place it here like a shim, and it gives me that little final push, and it's flush again like it was when I originally test fitted it. So I'm just going to glue this part in and then sand it all. I wanted to show real quick, if you happen to be using plywood and you have any little voids in here, you can take care of those pretty easily with some wood filler. Just fill in those patches, or with the patch of it. Press in there, make sure you get it in. And then once this dries, depending on your environmental circumstance, you know, if it's humid or hot or something, you can then sand it when you're sanding the body. I just wouldn't recommend using wood filler on any parts where the food would be making contact. This is on the outside, so it should be alright. You might have to apply this more than once, depending on how deep the holes are. And as you sand, sometimes it might go away. Just keep that in mind, little tip. Alright, once you've taken care of all the sawdust after sanding, I'm going to use this Watco Butcher Black. It's a food safe finish. Even though most likely when I'm going to be using it, I will be probably putting in some parchment paper or some plastic on the inside, just so it won't stick to the wood, the tortilla mixture. So I'll probably put maybe 2 coats thoroughly over the whole body and let that set for a while, for about maybe 2 or 3 days, and then I'm going to add some little feet to the bottom and it'll be done. Alright, now that the finish has cured, I like to just take a 1000 grit sandpaper and smooth out any roughness you might feel. You just want to do this really lightly. Alright, next up will be to put some feet onto this, and by feet I'm just going to use some of the clear bumpers that you use for surfaces, these here. You can make something more fancy, get some larger bumpers, or just actually make wooden feet and attach them to the bottom. But for this one I'm not going to do that, I'm just going to put the little rubber feet on. There we go. So what do you say we try this out now? Alright, so before I decided to take this into the kitchen, I wanted to paint over this little strip of wood that I added. I just don't like its look, and it looks dirty, and so I just want to paint over that. I'm using a really thick ultra covering interior paint. Hopefully it won't chip on me. That already looks remarkably better. I'll probably have to put maybe another couple coats on there, and then it'll be ready to go. Well, there you have it for my scrap wood tortilla press. It was a fun build. It works well. I'm definitely going to be using it again. And I already have some plans to make a fancier version in the future with some intricate patterning. And until then, hope you enjoyed this video. Cheers.